Hey everyone. Welcome everyone to the Phoenix Report. I'm Jack Connor and yeah, back here for another live stream. Just me, myself and I. Um Man, what a bad bit of news that we got. I think it was announced last night that Henry Cavill would no longer be reprising his role of Superman per a meeting he had with James Gunn and I guess is Peter Safran, who I believe is James Gunn, producing partner. Earlier this year, it was announced that James Gunn was taking over the DC universe, the DC films going forward. That it wouldn't even be the DCEU, the DC Extended Universe anymore. It would just be branded the DCU, the DC Universe. I guess the next slate of movies would be. So, we had seen a lot of different news come out over the last several weeks that didn't really make this a total surprise, but it's still unfortunate. We had heard, I think last week there was an announcement of Wonder Woman 3. Like there was a script. There were a couple scripts going around, I think, for Wonder Woman 3, which was going to be written and directed by Patty Jenkins, who was coming back. She directed the previous two Wonder Woman movies, and that ended up getting scrapped for whatever reason. And I think Gal Gadot posted something to the effect of wasn't really it was a little bit vague. We couldn't tell if she was saying goodbye to the role or just her announcement that the project wasn't moving forward as it had been planned to. So we don't know what that means. Is Gal Gadot completely finished with the Wonder Woman role as well? We don't know, but you would hear a lot of things like that, and some of them, it was hard to really get a feel for it. Even earlier this year, when the merger happened, the Warner Brothers Discovery, and David Zaslav was in charge of the DC films. You heard about a lot of projects being cut. The most infamous one being the Batgirl movie, which was, I think, like $70 or $80 million into production. Like the movie was almost done, and they just canceled it completely. Like, destroyed the footage and everything, from what I understand. Completely went in a different direction. And so this is the latest. This is the latest announcement, and man, I think it's probably the biggest. Probably the biggest piece of news yet regarding DC movies and the future of DC movies. It's really disappointing for me. I was I'm a Superman fan. I have been since I was a little boy, and I love the DC universe. I've always been a DC guy. I like Marvel too, but DC was always my thing. Superman especially was number one, with Batman being a very close second. I thought Henry was an incredible Superman. I was so happy when Man of Steel came out. My whole life I had been waiting for a Superman movie that I felt was a little more updated. I mean, yeah, the Christopher Reeve movies, obviously those are legendary. Those had, they certainly have their place in history. But even as a kid, I thought that those movies really felt dated. To be honest, even growing up in the 90s, I thought those movies felt a little bit dated, and I always wanted like a modern retelling of Superman. And we got Superman Returns in 2006 with Brandon Routh. Nothing against Brandon Routh, but the movie didn't really do what I thought it should, and I didn't really care for it all that much. But it seemed like things were turning around. You look at what they did with Chris. I should say what Christopher Nolan did with Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. Those were just masterpieces. Man of Steel came out in 2013. Then you heard the news of, which, by the way, Man of Steel was a very polarizing movie. Obviously, some people love it, some people hate it. I love it. I loved it. I thought it was great. I didn't necessarily agree with the criticisms, but I understood them. Um, and I felt that those criticisms um, could have been placated. I want to say in sequels, in future installments. When I heard when I heard the announcement for Batman versus Superman that they were really starting to build the DC universe, I was so excited. Um, and I loved what Marvel has done, and I was really hoping that DC could capture some of that cohesion that Marvel had for so long. I mean, they were just knocking it out of the park. Regardless of how you feel about the MCU and Marvel movies, you can't deny the success they had, and they were incredibly, I thought, consistent in terms of quality. And yeah, the box office, shows that. I mean, all the way through Endgame, it was just fantastic. And I had really always hoped that DC could get to that point as well. It seemed like they were headed there. Um, Batman versus Superman was something I was incredibly excited about. Unfortunately, when it came out, I I don't know if I had ever been more disappointed in a movie that I saw. In a movie that I had such high hopes for. I didn't. There were some great moments in that movie. Don't get me wrong. I thought Ben Affleck is, a fantastic Batman. But the way the characters were written in that movie, some of the story beats, it just left a little bit for me to be desired. But I had hope that they could kind of course correct a little bit with future movies, with future installments, I should say. Justice League came out in 2017, the theatrical version, which, I've done whole podcasts about that. At the time, I thought it was all right. I knew it wasn't, I knew it wasn't as great as it could have been, but I was fine with what we got. And then, of course, a couple years later, we found out that the Snyder cut was real, and that was just a masterpiece. It was, not well, maybe that's a little strong. I mean, the Zack Snyder's Justice League, I wouldn't say it was a perfect movie. There are a couple things I would have done differently if I was in charge of it, but it was a huge improvement over what was there already, and what was there already, I like to begin with. So that was a win for me. And the DCEU had it had some really good movies in it. The first Wonder Woman movie I thought was excellent. I even enjoyed the first Suicide Squad movie. I know a lot of people didn't, and that certainly had its problems. And I certainly wouldn't mind seeing the unreleased David Ayer cut of that movie if that ever comes out. You never know. I really liked Aquaman. I liked Shazam a lot. Wonder Woman 1984 and Birds of Prey, I didn't really care for all that much. James Gunn's Suicide Squad, I didn't really enjoy all that much. I mean, it had some good parts in that movie, but as a whole, it just, I don't know, it just didn't really do much for me. Then you had The Peacemaker, which was the series, the spinoff of that, starring John Cena, and that was another James Gunn project, and I didn't really care much for that either. Nothing against the people who worked on it and the actors involved. It's just I guess maybe the style of humor and just the way they kind of addressed the other DC characters. I don't know. It just didn't really work for me. It's just not my thing. If you liked it, great. That's cool. But I just wasn't really that into it. So. When they announced James Gunn as being the new head of DC Films, a lot of people were excited. I mean, look, I liked the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. I thought they were a lot of fun, but I also know that James Gunn is one of those guys. He's, one of those edgy auteurs. He has that particular sense of humor. He approaches these things in a certain way. He has a particular style, and I just didn't know what his intentions are with the DC characters, or what direction he really wants to go, or if he could, really, or what he would do with a character like Superman, who represents that traditional heroism that, might not be the coolest or edgiest thing out there, but it still resonates with a lot of people, myself included, and that's and a lot of people felt that Zack Snyder's version of Superman didn't quite get to that hopeful beacon of optimism and hope. And I mean, I would think that I argue that it did, but I could see why that they would think that. And I really had a lot of high hopes that Man of Steel 2 or whatever it was going to be called could have placated those other Superman fans. Then this year Black Adam came out, and I enjoyed Black Adam. I didn't think it was the greatest movie I've ever seen, but I thought it was I thought it was cool. I thought it was a worthy entry into the DCEU, and of course they had that cameo of Henry Cavill as Superman at the end. I had always joked around that, if there's anyone in Hollywood that is going to go to bat for Henry Cavill being Superman, it was going to be Dwayne Johnson. Like, he's going to move heaven and earth to get that fight scene with Superman. That's what Dwayne Johnson was all about. And look, let's be honest, Black Adam, it was a glorified vanity project for Dwayne Johnson. We all know it. And, but despite all that, I felt like it was a good win for DC movies. But unfortunately, I keep reading reports that Black Adam has been losing money, especially internationally, and that it's underperformed. So I'm sure that didn't help things, which is a shame. I liked the movie. I thought it was cool. I thought it, set up things like the Justice Society and other things that I was excited about. I wanted to see them expand upon. I wanted to see Black Adam and Shazam, fight each other in a movie, because obviously in the comics they're arch enemies. When the studio announced that Henry Cavill was coming back, earlier this year, we all thought that meant, like, all right, we're getting a Man of Steel. We're getting Man of Steel 2. Things are getting back on track. I had also heard reports about Ben Affleck shooting scenes as either Batman or Bruce Wayne for Aquaman 2. I don't know how true those reports are, or if that's still happening. I know when it comes to DC movies, they still have Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, I think, or Aquaman 2, basically, and then Shazam: Fury of the Gods. That's still set to come out next year. I mean, geez, at this rate, who knows if those movies will come out? They've certainly been filmed. I can tell you that. There's been a trailer at least for Shazam 2. So, what this means for the future of DCEU going forward, I don't know. But in case you missed it, I want to read back the post that Henry Cavill wrote about it. All right, quote. I have just had a meeting with James Gunn and Peter Safran, and it's sad news, everyone. I will, after all, not be returning as Superman. After being told by the studio to announce my return back in October prior to their hire, this news isn't the easiest, but that's life. The changing of the guard is something that happens. I respect that. James and Peter have a universe to build. I wish them and all involved with the new universe the best of luck and the happiest of fortunes. For those who have been by my side through the years, we can mourn for a bit, but then we must remember Superman is still around. Everything he stands for still exists, and the examples he sets for us are still there. My turn to wear the cape has passed, but what Superman stands for never will. It's been a fun ride with you all, onwards and upwards, end quote. So yeah, everything you'd expect from Henry Cavill. I mean, the guy's a class act. I'm sure he's disappointed about it. I remember back in 2003 and 2004 hearing his name attached to auditioning for Superman, for various Superman movie projects that didn't get off the ground for whatever reason. And I'm 38. Henry Cavill's only a year older than me, so this is back when he was around 20, 21. Like, so you could tell from an early age this guy really wanted to play that part. And you'd be hard pressed to find an actor out there who really cared about that part as much as Henry Cavill did. You could tell he was a genuine fan. And not that every actor has to be a fan of the character they're playing or has to have read the comic books, but you could tell this meant a lot to him besides just a way to make money. And look, I'm sure he made a lot of money at it, but the guy looked the part. I believe he's the first British actor to play Superman, but he obviously nailed the American accent. The guy, absolutely in his face looked the part, just built up a tremendous physique for it. The guy got in just ridiculous shape. I mean, my God, certainly the women loved him as well. There's no question about that. But I'm sure that didn't hurt one bit. But it's sad. I felt that Henry Cavill's performance tended to elevate the material that he was given. Even in Man of Steel, which I liked, he didn't really have as much to do emotionally. There were a few times where he could, kind of be, down to earth Clark Kent, and there were a few different scenes where he could sort of emote a little bit more. But he certainly, I think he was mainly cast because he looked the part. But he's also happens to be a very good actor, and it's a shame that we never got to see him as Superman in his prime, being that, optimistic beacon of hope that, Superman is. We saw Man of Steel. We saw him just starting his career out, and Batman versus Superman was what it was. Justice League was him coming back to life and returning. And that was it. And look, I'm grateful for what we got. Don't get me wrong. We did get a Justice League movie. We got two versions of it, both of which I really enjoyed. If I had to guess the reason why Henry isn't being recasted, or I should say isn't reprising the role, I guess James Gunn and Peter Safran want to go in a completely different direction for the DC universe. Who knows? It's too early to tell. I can't say that I have the biggest confidence in James Gunn. I think he's a fine filmmaker, but I just don't know if this is the right guy to handle Superman and the entire DC universe. I don't know. We'll have to see. Could what they put together be good? Yeah. I'm rooting for them. I want these movies to be good. And for the life of me, I can't figure out why, why it seems like it's so hard for the studio to put together a cohesive DC universe. The comics have been doing it for years, for the better part of a century. Superman has been around since 1938, Batman since 1940. These characters have been adapted in several media several times, and there are good stories out there. There are good stories, that have been told there, and there are still good stories that are yet to be told. I don't really understand what goes on in the behind the scenes politics when it comes to major film studios. I'm sure that there's a lot of negotiating back and forth. Maybe there's some resentment, or some bad blood between Zack Snyder and the studios still. I don't really know what the reason is, or why James Gunn doesn't want to continue what Zack Snyder has already put together. I guess he has his own vision. What that is, who knows? But we still have Aquaman 2 and Shazam that are supposed to come out next year. There's also that Flash movie. Who knows if that's going to come out at this point? They've already spent so much money into it, but with all the controversy with Ezra Miller, who knows? Like I mean, anything is possible. I don't rule out anything at this point in terms of projects being canceled or projects not coming out at all. Last year, or I think it was earlier this year, when we had the Batman with the Matt Reeves Batman with Robert Pattinson in the role. I wasn't necessarily the biggest fan of that movie, but I thought it was good. I thought, I'm like, all right, well, I could work with this, especially if they, keep improving with subsequent sequels, I'm not against it. Whether or not that factors into James Gunn's plans for his new DC universe, that I don't know. It sounds like it won't. I'm checking out James Gunn's Twitter feed right now. He says that they have a DC. James Gunn tweets, quote, "Peter and I have a DC slate ready to go, which we couldn't be more over the moon about. We'll be able to share some exciting information about our first projects at the beginning of the new year." Okay, so I mean, look, it's December 15th right now. Time will tell. I'm eagerly awaiting to hear what he has, what he's got on deck. It says James Gunn also says, among those on the slate is Superman. In the initial stages, our story will be focusing on an earlier part of Superman's life, so the character will not be played by Henry Cavill. So that sort of helped confirm it. James Gunn continues, but we had a great meeting with Henry and we're big fans, and we talked about a number of exciting possibilities to work together in the future. All right, I don't know if I totally buy that. That kind of sounds like some Hollywood, some Hollywood speak, just sort of a way of letting them down easy. We'll see if they're serious about that or what that could be. Yes, James Gunn is writing. He says we don't know who is directing yet. He says that this will not be a Superman origin movie. So, okay, I mean, it doesn't have to be a Superman origin movie. I wouldn't mind if it was another Superman origin movie, though. Even if it was, as long as it's a good movie. Superman has a great origin. So does Batman. So do all these superheroes. I mean, I don't mind the story being told and retold and retold again, as long as it's still entertaining. That's that's the mark of great literature to me. But especially if you're going to establish this new a new iteration. That's one of the things that I didn't really like about why they made Ben Affleck's Batman in Batman v Superman. He was 20 years in. It's like, well, like we're starting him 20 years in. Like we don't see any of all this other stuff that he's done over the years. I mean, most people know what the Batman story is, but there's a lot we haven't seen with this particular Batman. So that was sort of a pet peeve of mine. Speaking of Ben Affleck, James Gunn says that he met with Ben about directing. So, chances are if Henry's not coming back as Superman, there's a good chance that Ben is not going to be Batman again. I don't know if he already shot some footage for Aquaman 2, but that might be it. But Ben's he's an Academy Award winning director, so who knows what that could be. I mean, that's great and all, but I wanted to see more of his Batman. So, but I guess that's the best we can hope for. Some friends of mine I've talked to earlier were asking me about Henry Cavill's role in The Witcher, because he played Geralt of Rivia, the main character in The Witcher, for 3 seasons on the show on Netflix, and he announced a few months ago that he'd be leaving the show and his character would be recast and now be played by Liam Hemsworth. Everybody kind of thought that the reason why he left the show was because he had some Superman projects coming down the pike. There were also some rumors that he wasn't really happy with the creative direction of The Witcher. Apparently, let's see, according to a piece on The Guardian, Netflix confirms that the role of Geralt of Rivia will still be recast and played by Liam Hemsworth. So the news about Henry not being Superman anymore apparently won't affect his plans with The Witcher. Apparently they're still going through with the recasting. So unfortunately for fans of The Witcher who wanted to see Henry come back to that show, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. So again, there might be more to that story than we know. If it's true that Henry wasn't really happy with with the creative direction that The Witcher was going, that could be another reason why he left the show. Yeah, man, this one hurts. I really had high hopes that, with James Gunn coming in, or whatever the new management was, that especially when he showed up at the end of Black Adam, that, all right, we're going to get the DCEU back on track. I had heard that Ben was coming back as Batman for Aqua, for the scene in Aquaman, and man, it's just been one thing after another. As a DC fan, it's been just a roller coaster. Like I said, man, I don't know why it's so hard to adapt these characters and to make good movies with good stories about them. I guess there's just too many cooks in the kitchen when it comes to Warner Brothers. There's just too much red tape or politics behind the scenes. I don't know what it is. DC just can't seem to get it together. And I was glad to have the movies that we did have up until now. I really hope that in my lifetime, DC can fulfill its potential on screen. We've seen them do it. I mean, I look at the Bruce Timm DC animated universe that started in the 90s with Batman the Animated Series, lasted all the way through the 2000s with the Justice League series that they had. It was fantastic. Like they knocked it out of the park. I mean, these comics have been around, these characters and all the comics that have been around for, almost 100 years now. Like, I don't understand why it's so hard to do this. Maybe, yeah, and a lot of people say Superman is a hard character to write, and I kind of disagree with that. I think it depends on what direction you take with him. Like, it's not that hard to do. Maybe scale back his powers a little bit so he's not unbeatable, and write him like a normal person, and write him to be that, not only a good guy, but he's the best guy. Like he's supposed to be the best guy we have. So that's why more than all the powers that he can do, that's why Superman resonates with people. And I think Henry understood that. And whoever takes over for him in this role has some pretty big red boots to fill. And look, not that it can't be done. I mean, people say that Henry was irreplaceable as Superman. I wouldn't go that far. These characters should, and I was going to say, these characters should always be more important than the actors who are playing them. I've said that for a long time, and I stand by it. That's one of the reasons why I thought T'Challa should have been recast in Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. And that's one of the reasons why I still have chosen not to see that movie yet. But that's another conversation for another time. We knew Henry couldn't play Superman forever. Obviously, there was going to be someone to take over for him one day. I just didn't think it would be this soon. I thought that they could get a few more movies out of him. They spent so much time in these movies setting up for sequels that unfortunately will never happen. And that really is a shame. That really is a shame, because there's so much more they could have done with this character. And even with this, even with the DCEU, as imperfect as it may have been, there was still a lot they could have done with it. And it's really a shame. But the silver lining, I guess, is that maybe this is a chance for DC movies to start fresh. Would it be connected to the Matt Reeves Batman? I don't know. I personally think they should. I mean, if they're going to start over, they already have a new Batman ready to go. Like it doesn't make any sense to me why they wouldn't use that. But again, I don't know what the internal studio politics are. I don't know what the relationship between James Gunn and Matt Reeves is. That could really impact a lot of things. So we'll see. I'm disappointed. I want to look on the bright side of things. I want to be optimistic, and but It's hard because you love these characters so much, and when you're passionate about them, and you just want to see good movies being made. They don't always have to be the greatest movie you ever seen. Just give me enough to work with. Give me enough to entertain me, and I'll be okay. That's kind of why I've started doing these pitch meetings, or the fireside pitch. I already did one for the Ninja Turtles. I've got a few others in mind. Maybe I'll come up with a pitch for what I would have done in Man of Steel 2, which unfortunately it looks like that's never going to happen. But if I was in charge of that, what would I have done with it? Maybe that's something I'll come up with just for fun, just to get it off my chest, and maybe see what you guys think about it. But you never know, man. Please feel free to like and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. If you like my content, if you like this video, if you don't, I thank you for staying on this long and listening to me ramble. I appreciate it. You make sure you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at jackxconnor. You can like me on Facebook at facebook.com/jackconnormusic. You can feel free to check out my bands. I play in a rock band called Vertebreaker, facebook.com/vertebreakerband, and New Divide, which is a tribute to Linkin Park, at facebook.com/New Divide Bands. At facebook.com/New Divide Band. I also have a 90s cover band that I've started playing in called Friends in the 90s. Check us out, facebook.com/Friends of the 90s. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, you can make sure to leave a comment, leave a review. Email me at jackconnorpodcast@gmail.com, or you can tweet me with the hashtag Phoenix Report. I'll be posting an audio version of this on my podcast feed as well. So if you're listening to this on YouTube or any of the podcast platforms, make sure you hit like or subscribe. Hit the notification bell for YouTube to get updated with new posts. And you could leave a comment or review. Go back and listen to some of the other episodes. And just keep those requests coming. I really enjoy doing this channel, so I can kind of get all these thoughts and feelings off my chest, and I can talk to each and every one of you and let you know what I think about these things. But thank you guys for tuning in as always. This has been the Phoenix Report. I'm Jack Connor, and I'll see you guys again real soon.